Blessings. Let's talk about Venus and Mars, an incredible cycle going on. I've been looking at this for a little while, and I just thought, well, let's talk about it because there's quite a few interesting things to unpack. So first I'm going to show you guys a couple of different charts and the ultimate leading us to actually 2024. But the chart for 2024, I will speak about as we get closer to that time. But it's really important to flag at the moment and to kind of have it in mind for what's coming up relative to Venus-Mars cycles. So first of all, before I show you some charts and the cycles that began and the cycle that we're in at the moment, just always sort of try to remember when it comes to Venus and Mars, we are talking about the ultimate lovers, the two lovers, which are the sort of pinnacle outside of the sun and the moon, of course, of the masculine and feminine archetypes that exist within each of us, regardless of gender. But certainly they do speak to, as individual archetypes, the nature in which we share and relate and initiate relationships, our passions, desires, etc. Now, from an astronomical perspective, it's really interesting to observe the cycle of Mars and Venus because they have this dance, this magical dance. And the magical dance is the love affair, the courtship, the initiation, the intensity of when they are together, the moments of when they are moving away from each other. So there's you can see that astronomically, literally, and then there's the symbolic archetypal expression of what that means. And so, very simply put, when you think about a relationship, let's just keep it very, very conventional, straightforward, simple in terms of a man and a woman, let's say. Not that this only speaks to those two genders as in two heterosexual individuals. It can speak to gay, lesbian, etc., right? So I don't want to limit it to just a conventional relationship, but I'm just using that as a base template to express the nature of the feminine and masculine. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. So in any relationship, when you're talking about an intimate emotional, sexual, physical, spiritual connection between ourselves and another individual, it is largely described or reflected by these two planets, Mars and Venus, who, as I said, were the ultimate lovers. And just think about your own relationships through the years or through your life, or even in your current relationship at the moment. There's times when we come together with our partner and, we share different moments, different experiences, whether that's in things that we do, for entertainment or as hobbies, or whether that's more personal things that we do at home. We could meditate together, we could dance together. There's the sensual and sexual components. There's so many different layers to sharing with another person. Sharing is Venus, of course. And then there's times, certainly in our own life as individuals, but also within the context of our relationships, where we need to withdraw, pull back, in order to regenerate ourselves, right? We need to have time away from our partner. We need to have some space, some time out, things like that. And so that's actually reflected through Venus and Mars transiting through the zodiac and through the aspects that they have. Those aspects that they have describe this journey of the entire relationship. When they come together, the conjunction, that's when it's all on, it's all happening, it's really intense, sexual, sensual, everything is just there in an explosive, intensified manner. Love, lust, passion, etc. And then as that conjunction starts to move away, which will be Venus, generally speaking, moving away from Mars, or Mars moving away from Venus, depending on where they are in their cycles, which is what I'm going to show you in a minute with some charts. In any case, whoever's moving away first, or whatever it is, it's usually Mars though, It's just a reflection of, Mars is that masculine principle, and that masculine principle, in a very general sense, but to a very large extent, has got to do with the action that's initiated out there in the world. So when Mars moves away from Venus, he's literally just going back out into the world to get back in touch with his masculinity, his individuality, his drives, his strength, his motivations, the things that he wants to do out there in the world, right? This is reflected in our relationships. When you're in a relationship and your partner says, look, I'm going to go out with the boys tonight, or I'm going to go to a sporting event, or I'm going to go and have some drinks with some of my mates, or I'm, if they're more spiritually inclined, I might say, I'm going to go and hang out with some monks in that temple. It's just going to be all men. It's just all male monks. And that's what I'm kind of doing this weekend, just to retreat away for me to nurture my manhood, my masculinity in that more softer way, but still around masculine sort of energy. So there's millions of examples. I'm just throwing a few out there to draw the contrast, of course. But in any case, Mars always needs to move back out into the world and do his own thing, right? And Venus has a version of that, really, although Venus she's the conductor of the relationship, because Venus rules copper, and copper is the element that conducts what's going to happen with that energy, for instance. So she's the principle that connects, that conducts, that nurtures and loves and keeps something close by to her heart, as it were. But when she goes retrograde, right, she too has a version of this withdrawing from the relationship, if you like, or pulling back from it, stepping back into her own self and actually checking in with her own self, what she needs to work on, what she wants to heal, what she wants to pay more attention to about her own needs, and all matters to do with love and so forth. Because remember, Venus is about self-love. It's not only about loving the other, it's about the love that we have for ourselves as well. So in that retrograde cycle where she, disappears for a while, she goes into that journey within herself, which is why every time we have a Venus retrograde cycle, there's a lot of, comments or presentations or words spoken around, okay, Venus has gone retrograde. It's a re-evaluative process, inner reflective process of all things to do with Venus, right? And the two most spoken things are money and love, right? So this is a dance that occurs continuously between Mars and Venus. And because of they each have their own unique retrograde cycle and direct cycle. And through those rotations and those retrograde periods and direct periods, that it is that defines when they come together and when they separate. So let me just bring up some charts to give some demonstrations of that. So just put that up there. Okay. This is really super interesting, guys. So I hope you're going to be blown away because it's really cool. Okay, so first of all, last year in March, and this does happen, but it doesn't happen every year, for example. So it's not happening all the time. And what's going to make this talk today very unique is Pluto's ingress into Aquarius, and I'll explain why in a minute. But just cast your eyes on this chart and think back to this time last year, which was 6th of March. So we had Mars and Venus and Pluto all lining up in Capricorn, right? So triple conjunction. And so that's a new cycle there unto itself. Now, there's an unusual thing going on here, and I'll explain. So just remember that date and remember that triple conjunction. Okay. Now, look at the time of this and the date. It's 6th of March, 2022, and it's 4:36 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, so that's just based in Australia. it'll be the same. It'll be a different time and they'll be in a different location if you do it for a chart in your location if you are not in Melbourne. It doesn't really matter. We're talking about the triple conjunction, regardless of wherever it is. Okay. So now we go to the other chart, which is 6th of March, same day. Let me just go back. What time was that? 4:36. And okay, so an hour later, we have the ingress of Mars in Aquarius and Venus in Aquarius. An hour later. I can't say that this is a common occurrence. It's pretty bizarre because in effect, what we have really is we have two cycles playing out at the same time. One that started in Capricorn and then an hour later, one that started in Aquarius. It's pretty bizarre. It's pretty bizarre. So, however, today, the one that I'm going to focus on is this one in Aquarius. And the reason for that is because of Pluto's ingression into Aquarius March this year of 2023. So at the moment, so this cycle began 6th of March last year, okay? And as you can see, Pluto is still very close by. It's an out of sign conjunction, but it's well and truly there, okay? So there's that one too. So both conjunctions that happened an hour apart in two different signs, which is bizarre. And this one is at 0. So this one, so the one that I showed before, which was Capricorn, was the late degrees of Capricorn. So even though that was a new phase conjunction, it's at the end of the sign. So there's something that started in that cycle that is purely about completing and completions, about the archetype of Capricorn through Mars and Venus. And the Aquarian one is at a very different level because it's right at the beginning. It's at 0, 0, right? 0 is a critical degree in astrology. It's literally the beginning, the brand new beginning of an evolutionary cycle. So we have that. And as I said, I'm going to mainly focus on this cycle. So if we come to today, where are we? 4th of February, there we are. If we come to today's date, have a look at Mars and Venus and you know where they are situated in relation to each other. So Venus is in Pisces and Mars is in Gemini. Now this is actually a last quarter square. So this cycle that I'm talking about here, this one belongs to where they began in the sign of Aquarius last year. It's a little bit tricky because there's two cycles running at the same time, which is really weird. And as I said, the main thing that comes to my mind is that because the conjunction in Capricorn occurred at the very late degrees, there's something really karmic actually clearing out and finishing up around relationship matters. And then there's something really unusual, different, and quite unknown was born through the conjunction of the pair in Aquarius. And so fast forward almost a year later, what we have is we have the last quarter square. So we are closing that cycle of them in Aquarius. But so that within itself is pointing to, first of all, have a look at where the conjunction occurred in your birth chart. Where is 0 Aquarius in the birth chart? That's going to give you a clue of where this Mars-Venus entanglement, love affair, relationship, new seed that was planted, because that's literally what it was. You know, Mars-Venus at 0 Aquarius was just this tiny little seed that was planted. So you wouldn't have necessarily seen anything at that point in time. But as we fast forward almost a year down the track, there's quite a few things that might have unfolded. And at this point, we are at the last quarter square. In other words, finishing off this cycle and preparing for the next cycle that's going to occur. Now, Mars and Venus will not come together again until 2024. And that's why it makes this cycle even more profound from the point of view of finishing certain things off, particularly with the Capricorn one, and then also with this Aquarian one that started at 0 Aquarius as well. There's something really profound, I think, collectively speaking, and also individually in our lives. And it's kind of like this year is a big year for things that are being finished, completed, reevaluated, and reflected on. And particularly in the last quarter square, the last quarter square has got to do with how we are thinking about things. The first quarter square is the action of things, and the last quarter is the thinking of things. So there's probably a lot of reflection, reevaluating around our relationships at this point in time. And we've got quite a bit of time to work through this because Mars and Venus are not going to align again until next year. Now, to add to this picture, the reason they're not going to align again this year is because Mars has recently come out of his retrograde cycle. And so he is now starting to pick up momentum. In other words, the speed of Mars will, day by day, it is increasing. So by mid this year, he'll be moving at a pretty fast rate. Whereas Venus will soon start slowing down because this year in August, I think it is, when we have the Venus retrograde period in Leo, which is a morning star. So she's gearing up to prepare for that morning star retrograde cycle. And because she's preparing for that, she's going to start slowing down. So Mars is moving away from her. She's slowing down because she's going to get ready to go backwards, retrograde. Mars is picking up his speed because he's already been backwards. He's done his retrograde cycle and now he's back out in the world doing his thing. So there's this separating energy between them, if you like. And when Venus goes retrograde later this year, which I'll come back and talk about because that's going to be Leo Venus star point, morning star. So that's quite a big deal because that's got some really interesting aspects to it connecting to Uranus as well. So I want to come back and talk about that, maybe with Ariel Gutman. We'll see what happens by that time. But it's good to kind of have the awareness of this, Leo Venus morning star retrograde cycle that's coming up later this year. We are in the process of finishing a lot of things relative to two cycles that are simultaneously unfolding. And we are at the last quarter square of the conjunction that occurred at 0 Aquarius. And just to add to that, if you're not already confused, is this. And this is kind of like a really super big deal, which is why I decided to speak about this. So remember the conjunction, that was one conjunction. Then with an hour later, we had this conjunction at 0 Aquarius. Now, 24th of March this year, Pluto enters Aquarius. What degree is it? 0. Where was the Mars-Venus conjunction? 0 Aquarius. So that's a very, very, very unusual thing to have happen. First of all, we have not lived a life this lifetime to have witnessed Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. The conjunction of Venus and Mars was 0 Aquarius, so it's critical. It's something brand new. Pluto comes to the degree of where those two lovers were together last year. And so now Pluto activates that conjunction that occurred last year and brings something very important into this picture, into this cycle. Now, it is Pluto, so, Pluto is not a walk in the park. Now, to add to this, so I think something really big is going to happen in the month of March, not only because Pluto, well, first of all, just Pluto unto itself ingressing into Aquarius. That's a huge, huge month collectively. And then relative to the lovers, Mars and Venus, this Pluto at 0 Aquarius has got something big connected to that Mars-Venus cycle. Then next year, we have this ensemble. We have Venus and Mars forming a conjunction again in Aquarius, and this time Pluto is in Aquarius with them. So can you see this sort of, this picture and this story? It was seeded or planted or birthed 2022, March 2022, and now it comes back 2024, so a couple of years later. First, it was there with Pluto in Capricorn, so something massive was karmically really completing with the Capricorn factor. And now this is a completely brand new entrance, brand new cycle, with Pluto in Aquarius forming a conjunction to Mars and Venus. So this is a little while away because it's February 2024, but really it's a year away. It's 12 months. 12 months goes like that. So I am going to come back and speak about that a little bit more specifically, but I just wanted to flag it because if you've got planets or angles, you know, at the early degrees of Aquarius, then the Mars-Venus conjunction that was in Aquarius last year and this one that we're going to have in 2024, and in between those, we've got Pluto ingressing into Aquarius March this year, really expanding the picture of what this Mars-Venus cycle means. It has a collective perspective, and it also has our own individual experience of it. So if you have planets at the early degrees of Aquarius, this is likely to be quite a significant period for you around relationships. Now, Mars is, you know, Mars connects with Pluto quite easily because Mars is, Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. They are both planets of will and desire and passion in different ways slightly, but they still both represent those qualities, if you like. Pluto's always the soul, of course, the driver, the driving force behind everything. But Venus, you know, she's completely opposite to Mars and Pluto at that basic general sort of level. If you're just looking at unpacking the archetype of Venus and what she represents on that everyday kind of level, she's a very, very different archetype to Mars and to Pluto. It's very simple. Venus is love, Mars is war. Those two couldn't be more opposite from each other, could they? So that shows us just how different the nature of Venus is and how different the nature of Mars is. So what I'm getting at is that I think Venus is going to be the one that would struggle out of this triple conjunction. She's really being hampered, you know, taken over, if you like, by this Mars-Pluto. So it's not an easy triple conjunction. There's a lot to it. I'll come back and speak on it later down the track, but I just wanted to show you guys what was going on and to, you know, just consider at the moment this last quarter square basically started this cycle of Mars, Venus, and where they are at the moment started last year. So we are in a time where we are giving a lot of thought to our relationships, our world of relationships, everything about them, who we have them with, how we have them, what we want out of them, what we are willing to give, where we have grown, what we have outgrown, what it's time to, you know, move away from, etc., etc. There's so many layers to it. This is what's happening at the moment. So definitely worth checking out where the conjunction occurred in your birth chart and having a think about what what has unfolded for you since March last year until now relative to that conjunction and where they are in the birth chart. And I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear, you know, if you've had these themes quite prominent, you know, presenting in your life, that where there has been, you know, some significant life changes or changes in your relationships or relationship. You could be single. I'm one of those people. So obviously for me, this cycle hasn't related with myself and my partner or my beloved or my lover, because I don't have that in my life at the moment. But I still work with this cycle from the point of view of myself. And if you're going to do that, then I guess the work around that is the alchemical journey and work and unfoldment of the balance of your own inner masculine and feminine. That's how I would work with this cycle, to work on those levels within my own self. And that's very powerful, because the healthier our own inner feminine and masculine is, the more balanced it is. I think it's fair to suggest that the healthier our relationships with other people can be as well, because when we've done the alchemical inner work on ourselves in the light of balancing the inner feminine and masculine, we are less likely to project. So a woman, for example, just, you know, this is basic 101 psych, right? A woman's masculine component will often be wrapped up in the relationship she had with her father, whatever it was, and a lot of that material is projected onto the man that she then looks for. Basic 101 psych. And the same applies to men. That is, the feminine archetype within them is largely formed, conditioned and so forth by the relationship they had with their mother, and then that subsequently is projected onto the women or females they either attract or repel. So we all have these complex templates and fields of conditions and experiences that we've had throughout our life. So it is always a worthy journey to undertake, to understand our own inner feminine and masculine, and nurture that and balance that and heal that and understand it. So that's how I would utilize a Mars-Venus cycle. Like, you can still do that when you're in a relationship. You don't have to wait till you're out of a relationship to do it. But certainly when you are on your own, there's a lot more ability to focus on that, just on yourself, because there's no one there to distract you or to activate you or to trigger you, right? So yeah, they're just some of my thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys, and I'd love to hear if any of it speaks to you, or if, you know, if anything's been going on for you around Mars-Venus matters. And I have shown this book before, but I'll show it again because I love it. The Sacred Dance of Venus and Mars by Michelle Finey. And the whole book is about Venus and Mars. I have shown it before, and she does have something that she talks about in there, which is called the point of passion. And I've done a video on it, actually, and it's worth watching the video and then worth getting the book to figure out where your point of passion is, which is derived by a particular formula and so on and so forth. And it's just another added point that describes your passion about your passion in life, about life, which clearly has got to do with Mars's passion. But anyway, in this book, you know, she talks about a lot of different things pertaining to Venus and Mars. They're cycled together. You know, Mars is the warrior, Venus is, you know, the goddess of love, beauty, harmony, etc., etc. And she covers in sort of more length and detail some of the things that I addressed today about their relationship, and that is, you know, when they are conjunct, that's the passionate lovers coming together in union and just being completely sort of immersed in each other, if you like. And, you know, when the aspect starts to dissipate, that's Mars going out into the world again, you know, doing his own masculine thing. And Venus, she has to allow him to go back out there. She has to do that, actually, because that's what's going to bring them back together again. And we go through these cycles in our own relationships as well, you know. I mean, I'm a double Aquarius, but I've got a Scorpio Venus star point, and then I've got Venus in Pisces, and, you know, so I'm a bit of a mixture. I can be really detached in a relationship, and then on the other hand, I'm extremely all in, intense, you know, to death do us part kind of thing. So I'm a bit of a contradiction in that way, but I'm very aware of those qualities within me, and so I've worked on that through the years to bring it to some kind of integration within myself and some healthy way of being that. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because I hate talking about myself, but I bring that up because there'll be many people that would relate to that, number one. Number two, if we're in a relationship and we suffocate our beloved, our partner, smother, suffocate, not allow them to move and breathe and be their own self, as it were, by having time out and so on and so forth. I think that's a recipe, you know, for disaster. It's a recipe to potentially end the relationship, because everyone does need their own space for whatever reason or reasons. So just some thoughts, and yeah, I'd love to hear back from you guys. And look, if you don't have, you know, enough understanding of astrology, and you want to have a reading with me because you want to explore Mars Venus in your chart, whether that's the position of them natally, because that's a fundamental, you know, what cycle, what phase are they in your chart? Very important to know the phase that they are in. It's telling you a lot about your whole life. Mars and Venus are just such important planets about everything that's connected to us in our life, and the things that we do and will into action. Mars is what we will into action, what we initiate. Venus is everything that we love. So they are so fundamental. So reach out if you want to have a reading with me, and I'll see you guys very soon. Love and star blessings. Bye for now.